Hello, and welcome back to the Sleepy Historian. Find a comfortable place, let the sounds of the world fade away, and allow yourself to settle into the quiet of the evening. Tonight, we aren't walking through the echoing halls of a castle, or the muddy fields of a great battle. Instead, we are looking closer at the very clothes on the backs of the people who lived in those castles, the kings, the queens, the princes and princesses. We see them in portraits and imagine them in our minds, draped in velvet, shimmering with gold, and trimmed with the softest furs. Their garments were symbols of immense power and wealth, a visual language that everyone understood. But like any great story, there is a hidden side, a darker thread woven into the magnificent tapestry. Did you know that the brilliant scarlet of a queen's gown might have been created in a toxic fog that shortened the dyer's life, or that the weight of a king's coronation robes could be a form of physical torment? These beautiful fabrics hide so many sad secrets, stories of pain, sacrifice, and suffering that are rarely told. So, get cozy, and let's gently pull back the layers of silk and brocade to uncover the quiet sorrows of medieval royal garments. If you enjoy these late-night explorations of the past, please consider subscribing for more quiet histories. Now, let us begin. Our story starts not in a palace, but in a dark, steamy workshop on the edge of a medieval city. This is the world of the dyer, the alchemist of color. The air here is thick with the acrid stench of ammonia, derived from stale urine collected in barrels, and the sharp, metallic tang of chemical mordants like alum and iron salts. A man, his arms stained a permanent, mottled shade of crimson, stands over a massive wooden vat. He stirs a bubbling, viscous liquid with a long wooden paddle, the source of the coveted royal red. This color, a vibrant scarlet, doesn't come from a flower, but from the dried and crushed bodies of thousands upon thousands of tiny Kermes insects, painstakingly harvested from oak trees. To achieve this brilliant, lasting color, a color legally reserved for the highest nobility, he must breathe in these fumes day after day. The mordants, used to fix the dye to the fabric, were often toxic. Lead, arsenic, and mercury were common ingredients in the dyer's arsenal, slowly poisoning them over years. They suffered from respiratory illnesses, skin ailments, and neurological damage, all for the sake of creating a color that would signify the power of a distant monarch. This workshop is a place of incredible skill, but also of slow, silent sacrifice. The finished cloth, a bolt of perfect, breathtaking scarlet wool, is then transported to the castle. It is now in the hands of a queen's ladies-in-waiting. They unroll the fabric in a sunlit chamber, its color so vibrant it seems to drink the light. The contrast is jarring. The memory of the dark, foul-smelling workshop fades, replaced by the serene and opulent atmosphere of the royal court. The queen herself inspects the material, her fingers tracing the fine weave. She sees only beauty, a symbol of her status and her kingdom's wealth. She is likely unaware of the man with the stained hands and damaged lungs, whose health was the price for this particular shade of red. The fabric is a testament to a brutal reality of the medieval world, that the luxury and splendor of the few was built directly upon the hardship and suffering of the many. The beautiful gown she will wear to the next feast carries a secret history of poison and toil in every single thread, a story completely invisible to those who will admire it. From the dyer's vat, the threads of our story lead us to another dimly lit room, this one within the castle walls or a nearby town's workshop. Here, the air is not filled with chemical fumes, but with the quiet, persistent hum of labor. This is where the most delicate work is done, the embroidery, the lace-making, the fine stitching. And the hands performing this work are often shockingly small. Children, especially young girls, were highly sought after for this kind of work. Their nimble fingers and sharp eyesight were considered ideal for creating the intricate patterns and sewing on the tiny seed pearls that adorned royal garments. A girl, perhaps only 8 or 9 years old, sits hunched over a large embroidery frame. By the flickering light of a single candle, she pushes a needle through heavy brocade, her small face etched with concentration. She works for hours on end, from before sunrise to long after sunset. The work is punishing. The poor light strains her eyes, leading to permanent vision problems. The repetitive motion of her hands and arms will, over time, lead to chronic pain and deformities in her joints. Her posture, always bent over her work, will give her a permanent stoop. She is creating a scene of mythical beasts and flowers on a cloak destined for a prince, a world of fantasy she will never know. That same cloak is now finished. It is a masterpiece of art and craftsmanship. It hangs in the prince's chambers, the candlelight catching the glint of the gold thread and the shimmer of the silk. The mythical creatures the young girl so painstakingly stitched seem to dance in the warm light. When the prince wears it, he is met with gasps of admiration from the court. They see the power, the wealth, the artistry. They comment on the incredible detail, the lifelike quality of the embroidery, but they do not see the ghost of the child who is woven into it. They do not see her strained eyes, her aching back, or her pricked and calloused fingers. Her childhood was spent in the pursuit of this perfect, beautiful object. The cloak becomes a part of the prince's identity, a symbol of his royal lineage. For the girl who made it, it was years of her life, a silent testament to a system that valued the decoration of a nobleman's body over the well-being of a child's. The beauty of the garment is undeniable, but it is a beauty that hides a profound and heartbreaking injustice, a story of stolen youth. Now, let us imagine a coronation day. The air in the cathedral is thick with incense and anticipation. The king approaches the altar, not with a sprightly step, but with a slow, deliberate, and heavy tread. The reason is the sheer weight of his majesty. The garments he wears are not merely cloth, they are armor of status, and they are incredibly heavy. His tunic is made of velvet, a fabric far thicker and heavier than its modern counterpart. Over this, he wears a dalmatic of silk brocade, a fabric interwoven with actual threads of gold and silver. These are not gold-colored threads, they are fine wires of precious metal wrapped around a silk core. And then comes the final piece, the coronation mantle. This vast, sweeping cloak is covered from collar to hem in hundreds, if not thousands, of sewn-on pearls, sapphires, rubies, and emeralds. Each jewel, each pearl adds to the burden. The entire ensemble could easily weigh 40 to 50 pounds, the weight of a small child. Attendants help him move, carefully arranging the train, their faces showing the strain of managing the sheer mass of the fabric and jewels. The king's face, meant to be a mask of serene power, betrays a hint of the immense physical effort it takes just to stand and walk. Seated upon the throne, the king is the very picture of royal authority. The crown is on his head, the scepter in his hand, and the magnificent, heavy robes cascade around him. To the assembled crowd, he is more than a man. He is a living symbol of divine right and national power. But inside the crushing weight of his clothes, he is simply a man. The metal threads and jewels dig into his shoulders. The layers of velvet and silk trap heat, and sweat trickles down his back, even in the cool stone cathedral. He cannot move freely. He cannot turn his head quickly or lift his arms with ease. He is, in a very real sense, a prisoner of his own splendor. The very clothes that signify his ultimate power also serve to immobilize and torment him. This was the paradox of medieval royalty. Their status was a performance, and the costume was often a tool of endurance. The weight of the crown was a well-known metaphor, but the literal, crushing weight of the robes was a physical reality, a constant, heavy reminder of the burdens of leadership that was felt not just in the mind, but in the muscles and bones. Beyond the weight of fabric and jewels, there was a more insidious danger lurking in the royal wardrobe poison. We move now to a noblewoman's private chamber, her boudoir. She sits before a polished silver mirror, preparing for a court appearance. The medieval ideal of beauty for high-ranking women was one of almost ethereal pallor. A ghostly white face, free of blemishes and color, signified a life of leisure, untouched by the sun and manual labor. To achieve this look, she reaches for a small part of a thick, white cosmetic called Venetian ceruse. It was a potent mixture of white lard and vinegar. She carefully applies a layer of this paste to her face, her neck, and her décolletage, creating a smooth, white, mask-like complexion. She is, of course, unaware that she is painting her face with a deadly poison. The lead is slowly being absorbed through her skin. Over years of use, it will cause skin lesions, hair loss, muscle paralysis, and severe neurological damage. It rots the teeth and gums, and ultimately it can lead to madness and death. The pursuit of an artificial, status-driven ideal of beauty was a slow form of suicide. Later, at the feast, the queen is a vision of aristocratic beauty. Her face is a perfect, luminous oval of white, a stark contrast to the vibrant colors of her gown and the rich tapestries of the hall. Her lips are reddened with a touch of vermilion, a pigment derived from mercury sulfide, another potent toxin. Her serene expression and flawless complexion are admired by all. They are the marks of her supreme rank. No one in the hall, least of all the queen herself, would connect her recurring headaches, her trembling hands, or her bouts of irritability to the very cosmetics that make her so beautiful. The poison she wears is a silent secret, a fatal vanity. Her quest for the perfect, noble appearance, a look that separated her from the common folk, was slowly and invisibly destroying her from within. The ideal of beauty was a gilded cage, and the key that locked it was often coated in lead and mercury, a sad and deadly secret hidden in plain sight on the faces of the most powerful women in the land. Let us turn our attention now to the biting cold of a winter forest. The snow lies thick on the ground, muffling all sound. Here, far from the warmth and light of the castle, another part of our story unfolds. A trapper, clad in rough wool and leather, checks his lines. He moves with a grim purpose, his breath pluming in the frigid air. His targets are the small creatures of the forest whose pelts are demanded by the nobility. He is seeking the stoat, a small weasel whose coat turns a brilliant, pure white in the winter, all except for the black tip of its tail. This fur, known as ermine, was the ultimate symbol of royalty and purity, legally restricted for use by only the highest ranks of monarchs and nobles. To create a single cloak, a garment that would be used to trim a king's robes or line a queen's mantle, required the pelts of hundreds of these small animals. The traps were cruel, and the scale of the hunt was immense, all to satisfy the insatiable demand for this symbol of status. The pristine white fur that represented purity was born from a world of cold, efficient, and widespread death. Back in the warmth of the castle's great hall, a young prince stands by the roaring fire. He is wrapped in a magnificent cloak, its collar and cuffs trimmed with the unmistakable pattern of pure white ermine, dotted with the black tips of the tails. The fur is impassably soft, a cloud of white against the deep blue velvet of his cloak. He feels the warmth and the luxury, the softness, a comforting weight on his shoulders. To him, the fur is simply a part of his royal inheritance, a birthright. He has no concept of the snowy forest, the cold steel traps, or the hundreds of lives that were extinguished to create his garment. The cloak is a barrier, not just against the cold, but against the harsh reality of its own creation. The elegance of the court, with its poetry, music, and refined manners, was built on a foundation of brutal, hidden industries. The ermine trim is a perfect metaphor for this, a symbol of innocence and power that completely erases the story of the violence required to produce it. Clothing in the medieval court was more than just fashion. It was a critical tool of finance and politics. Let us visit the chambers of the royal treasurer late at night. He sits at a heavy oak desk, his face lined with worry in the flickering candlelight. Before him are not sacks of gold, but ledgers and account books. He is reviewing the expenses for the royal wardrobe, and the numbers are staggering. A single gown for the queen, made from imported silk from the East and embroidered with gold thread from Cyprus, could cost more than a knight's entire estate. Kings and queens were expected to maintain an appearance of overwhelming wealth and power, and their clothing was the primary vehicle for this display. They often spent far beyond their means, plunging the crown into deep debt with textile merchants and moneylenders. The pressure to outshine rival courts was immense. A monarch's power was judged by the splendor of their appearance, and falling short could be seen as a sign of weakness, inviting political challenges. The treasurer's tired eyes tell a story of a kingdom held together by shimmering, fragile, and incredibly expensive threads. This high-stakes game of fashion diplomacy is on full display during a state visit. Two monarchs meet in a grand hall, their courtiers arranged behind them. While their words are of peace and alliance, their clothes speak a language of competition and power. One king is dressed in Italian velvet, so dark a blue it is almost black, a color fiendishly expensive to produce. The other is in cloth of gold, a fabric so completely woven with precious metal that it gleams like a solid piece of jewelry. Every detail is a calculated move. The quality of the fur trim, the size of the jewels on their belts, the very length of their pointed shoes, all are messages being sent and received. A gift of clothing to a fellow monarch had to be perfectly judged. If it was too cheap, it was an insult. If it was too extravagant, it could be seen as a boast or an attempt to indebt the receiver. In this silent, glittering war of wardrobes, a kingdom's treasury could be drained, and the fate of nations could be influenced by the choice of a silk brocade over a simple wool. While the creation of these garments was a world of hidden labor, so too was their maintenance. Let us go down to the castle's laundry, a place of steam, stone, and endless work. Here, far from the eyes of the nobility, a group of laundresses toils. They are on their knees by a river bank, even in the biting cold, or working over wooden tubs in a damp scullery. They are washing the royal linens, the undergarments, the tablecloths, and occasionally the outer garments themselves. The work is brutal. They use harsh lye soap, which leaves their hands raw, chapped, and bleeding. They beat the heavy, waterlogged fabrics against rocks or scrub them on washboards to remove the dirt and grime of court life. A single velvet cloak, soaked with water, would be impossibly heavy, requiring several women to lift. These women were the invisible caretakers of the royal image, ensuring that the fantasy of effortless elegance was never shattered by the reality of a stain or a spot of mud. Their work was essential, yet they were among the lowest-ranking servants in the household. In another quiet corner of the castle, a seamstress sits mending. She is not a child embroiderer, but a woman whose life is dedicated to repair. The opulent garments of the royals were too valuable to be discarded. A tear in a silk sleeve, a jewel lost from a bodice, a seam coming undone, these were small disasters that had to be rectified immediately and invisibly. With a needle far finer than most could thread, she carefully stitches a tear in a delicate damask gown. Her hands are a map of her trade, the fingertips calloused and marked with countless tiny scars from the prick of a needle. She works with threads so fine they are like spider webs, her eyes focused on a repair that must be completely unnoticeable. She and the laundresses were part of a silent army. They worked tirelessly behind the scenes to maintain the illusion of perfection. The flawless appearance of the king and queen was not magic. It was the result of the constant, grueling, and utterly unacknowledged labor of women, whose names will never appear in any history book. Beyond the external pressures and hidden labor, the garments themselves often inflicted a private, physical torment on the wearer, particularly women. The medieval silhouette prized a high, small waist and a flattened chest, an idealized form that bore little resemblance to a natural body. To achieve this, a noblewoman would be laced into a garment called a kirtle or cote-hardie. In a private chamber, a lady-in-waiting pulls hard on the laces at her mistress's back. The noblewoman holds onto a bedpost, her breath held, as the garment is cinched tighter and tighter. This wasn't the extreme, steel-boned corsetry of later centuries, but it was a form of rigid, body-altering constriction nonetheless. The stiffened linen and tight lacing provided support for heavy outer gowns, but they also severely restricted breathing. The pressure on the ribs and internal organs was constant, and over a lifetime could cause health problems. This daily ritual was a necessary torment, the price for achieving the fashionable, aristocratic shape. Now dressed, the noblewoman walks through a manicured castle garden. Her posture is unnaturally erect, her steps small and measured. She cannot bend or twist easily. The restrictive gown that creates her elegant silhouette also acts as a physical cage. She is a beautiful statue, meant to be admired for her form, but limited in her function. This physical confinement was a powerful metaphor for the social confinement of highborn women. Their lives were often as carefully structured and restricted as their bodies were by their clothing. The beautiful, tightly laced gown was a constant physical reminder of the rigid expectations and limited freedom that came with her high status. The elegance we admire in paintings was often, for the woman wearing it, a state of perpetual, low-grade discomfort and confinement, a secret pain worn for the sake of appearances. Finally, after a life spent in layers of silk, velvet, and gold, our story comes to its inevitable end. All the power, all the wealth, all the political maneuvering leads to a quiet, cold crypt. Here, the ultimate secret of royal garments is revealed, their ultimate irrelevance. A stone sarcophagus is being prepared. The monarch, who in life was a spectacle of jeweled splendor, is now prepared for their final rest. In many cases, especially in the earlier medieval period, they were not buried in their coronation robes. Instead, they were stripped of all their finery and wrapped in a simple shroud of plain, undyed linen. This act was one of profound Christian humility. It was a final, powerful statement that before God, all are equal. The king and the peasant both end their days in a simple cloth, their worldly status meaningless in the face of eternity. The shroud was the great equalizer, the final garment that erased all the distinctions so carefully constructed in life. And so, we end our journey in a modern museum. A single medieval gown is displayed in a climate-controlled glass case. The lighting is low and soft, protecting the fragile, ancient fabric. The once vibrant colors have faded over the centuries. The gold thread is tarnished, the silk is delicate and worn. It is beautiful, but it is also ghostly. It is a relic of a lost world, and it is filled with the silent stories we have explored tonight. It holds the memory of the dyer's toxic fumes, the child's aching eyes, the queen's poisoned skin, and the laundress's chapped hands. It is a monument to both breathtaking artistry and profound human suffering. The next time you see a portrait of a medieval king or queen, resplendent in their finery, perhaps you will see them a little differently. Look beyond the gleam of the jewels and the richness of the velvet, and remember the sad, secret stories that are woven into the very fabric of their majesty. Until next time, sleep well.